I didn't realize how quiet a room could get until someone you love decides you're the problem they've been carrying. Not because you did something dramatic. Not because you screamed or made a scene. Just because you finally asked a question they didn't want to answer. That evening, I came home tired in the specific way you get when your body's still moving, but your thoughts feel stuck in wet cement. My shoulders hurt from work. My phone battery was low, and I was already doing the math in my head for how I'd stretch the week. I pushed open the apartment door and smelled stale air and something sweet that had turned sour. My mom was at the small kitchen table, shoulders squared, jaw tight, and a stack of envelopes spread out like a deck of cards she couldn't lose with. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if I'd eaten. She didn't ask anything that sounded like a mother checking on her daughter. She just tapped the stack with one finger and looked at me like I'd arrived late to a job interview. "Sit," she said, like she was addressing someone who owed her a report. I didn't sit. I just stood there, still in my shoes, holding my work bag by the strap. "What is this?" "You tell me," she said. "Because I'm done playing games." It's hard to explain the feeling of being spoken to like a stranger inside your own home, like your presence is a nuisance and your exhaustion is a personal insult. She slid a couple of envelopes toward me. They were the kind that scream urgency without needing to raise their voice. Bold print, red stamps, dates circled, past due, final notice. I swallowed and tried to keep my tone neutral. "I sent money last week." She laughed like I'd told her a joke. "You sent what you felt like sending." "I sent what I had." "And that," she said, leaning back, "is exactly why you're not as responsible as you like to pretend you are." I felt that familiar pull in my chest, the old reflex to explain myself, to list everything I'd done, and every hour I'd worked to make my case, like I was in court, and she was the judge. For years, that's what my life had been, me presenting evidence that I wasn't selfish, that I wasn't lazy, that I wasn't ungrateful, and her rejecting it anyway. I set my bag down and picked up the top envelope. It wasn't even addressed to her. It was addressed to me. My name, my initials. My future tied to a number at the bottom. "Why is this in my name?" I asked, and I heard something in my voice shift. Not anger, not panic. Something colder. Something awake. My mom's eyes narrowed. "Because you live here." "That's not an answer," I said. "It's the only one you need," she snapped. "You want to act grown, then stop questioning every little thing like I'm on trial." I kept staring at the envelope. "I didn't open this account." "Yes, you did," she said too fast. "You signed the paperwork. You were right there." I wasn't. But I didn't say that yet because my brain was doing that thing it always did around her, replaying conversations, searching for a moment where she'd asked me to sign something just routine, where she'd shoved a form in front of me when I was half asleep, where she'd made me feel dramatic for reading the fine print. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "If it's mine, why didn't you tell me?" Her mouth tightened. Then she pushed her chair back and stood. "Because I knew you'd do exactly this," she said, pointing at the envelope like it was proof of my character. "You'd make it into a whole situation. You'd act like I'm some kind of criminal. You think you're so smart because you can keep a job, and you can take classes, and you can walk around like you're better than me? Fine." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the sharp edge of whatever she'd been drinking earlier. "If you're so capable, then start acting like it. Handle your own life. Pay what you owe. Don't expect me to keep carrying you." There it was. The line she'd been saving. The sentence she could throw like a rock, and then pretend she didn't understand why glass was everywhere. I stared at her. I wanted to say, "I've been carrying you." I wanted to say, "I'm not your partner. I'm your child." I wanted to say, "I didn't choose any of this." But I also knew her. If I said any of that, she'd turn it into a speech about sacrifice and loyalty, and how she stayed when other people left. She'd paint herself as the only adult in the room, and I'd end up apologizing for asking a question. So I didn't do that. I nodded once, slow, calm. "Okay," I said. Her expression flickered like she didn't trust what she'd just heard. Okay, okay, I repeated. I hear you. She seemed almost disappointed that I wasn't crying. She waited like the fight was supposed to continue and I was supposed to play my part. When I didn't, she turned away sharply and started gathering the envelopes back into a pile, muttering about how she knew I'd make this hard. That night, I went into my room and closed the door. I didn't pack. Not yet. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around at what I'd built in a space that never really belonged to me. My books, my laptop, a cheap lamp I'd bought secondhand, a photo of my dad tucked into the mirror frame. The one picture I'd kept through every move, every argument, every time my mom demanded I stop living in the past. My father had been gone a long time. People always want one clean reason why a parent disappears. They want one villain, one betrayal, one big moment. Real life is rarely that neat. In our family, it wasn't one moment. It was a slow drift, a decision not to return calls, a new address that didn't get shared, a silence that grew into absence. And when he left, my mom turned the remaining love in the house into a ledger. For a long time, I didn't understand that's what was happening. I thought we were surviving. I thought we were a team. When I got my first paycheck as a teenager, she told me it was grown-up money and grown-ups contribute. When I tried to keep some aside for school, she told me I was selfish. When I asked what the bills were, she told me I didn't trust her. When I questioned why her spending didn't match our struggling, she told me I had no idea what stress did to a person. And I believed her. Because I wanted to. Because believing her meant I could keep thinking we were still family. That night, after she said I should handle my own life, I lay awake and listened to the apartment settle. The pipes, the hallway noise, the dull hum of a refrigerator that had survived too many years. I waited for her to burst into my room and demand an apology. She didn't. I waited for a text. Nothing. The next morning, she was already gone before I woke up. She left a note on the counter. 2 sentences. Don't forget you have responsibilities. Don't embarrass me. I read it twice. Then I put it face down and made coffee like I hadn't just been warned by my own mother. For the next week, I did something I wasn't used to doing. I said very little. I went to work. I went to class. I came home. I cooked simple meals. I kept my face neutral. If she provoked me, I didn't take the bait. She mistook my quiet for surrender. She always did. She thought silence meant I'd accepted my role again. But I wasn't surrendering. I was watching. I waited until a day she left the apartment in a hurry, complaining she was late and didn't have time for attitude. The door shut. Her footsteps faded. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, breathing through the fear that always rose when I considered going through anything of hers. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for my name. It didn't take long. A folder tucked under a stack of magazines, a binder with paper clips, an envelope behind the microwave. Everywhere I looked, there were little pieces of my life being managed without my consent. Accounts opened. Utilities started. Store cards. A loan statement with my information. Not hers. Mine. My social security number. My date of birth. My signature in a handwriting that looked like hers trying to imitate mine. My hands shook, but my mind got strangely clear. This wasn't messy budgeting. This wasn't, "We're struggling, help me." This was someone using my identity like a tool, like a loophole, like a spare tire. I took pictures of everything with my phone. I didn't remove documents yet. I didn't storm out. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her. I did what adults do when they finally accept something painful. I started building a file. That weekend, I met my friend Marisol at a small diner near my job. It wasn't a fancy place, cracked vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like it had been through too much, a waitress who called everyone hon. Marisol had known me long enough to recognize when I was acting fine in a way that meant I wasn't. She slid into the booth across from me, looked at my face and said, "You look like someone just handed you a truth you can't unsee." I didn't cry. I didn't dramatize. I just took out my phone, opened the photos, and slid it across the table. Her eyes moved over the screen. Then her mouth tightened. "This is in your name," she said. I nodded. I didn't open them. Marisol leaned back. "This isn't a misunderstanding. I know. What are you going to do?" That was the hardest part. Not because I didn't know what the right answer was. I did. The hard part was accepting that doing the right thing would make me look cruel to anyone who still believed the story my mom told about herself. The brave single mother. The abandoned woman. The one who gave up everything. People love that story. It makes them feel compassionate. It gives them someone to root for. And in that story, the child who leaves becomes the villain. "I'm going to protect myself," I said, and the words felt unfamiliar in my mouth. I don't know how. Marisol reached across the table and took her phone back. "We start with your credit report," she said, like it was a simple task, like we were planning a grocery list. "We see everything. Then we decide what you're responsible for." Which might be none of it. That night at her place, we pulled my credit report. I watched line after line load on the screen and felt my stomach drop in stages like a slow elevator descent. Accounts I didn't recognize. Balances I couldn't afford. Late payments that weren't mine. A small personal loan I never applied for. Utility accounts tied to our address under my name. It was a whole second life when my mom had been living through me. There's a particular kind of betrayal that doesn't look dramatic from the outside. No bruises, no shouting in public. Just paperwork. Just numbers. Just doors quietly closing on your future before you even realize someone put a lock on them. Marisol didn't let me spiral. She made tea. She gave me a notebook. "Write everything down," she said. "Account numbers, dates, balances. Don't rely on memory. Memory gets emotional. Paper doesn't." I wanted to argue. Not with her, with the reality itself. I wanted to say my mom would never do this. I wanted to say maybe it was a mistake. I wanted to find some way to keep loving her without admitting what she'd done. But the report didn't care what I wanted. 2 days later, I went to a local legal aid office that offered free consultations. The waiting room was plain and tired, like every chair had heard too many stories. When the caseworker called my name, I stood up with my folder and walked in like I was carrying something heavy and sharp. The woman behind the desk looked through my documents carefully. She didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She didn't say, "But she's your mother," the way people always do when they want you to accept mistreatment politely. She just nodded and said, "This is serious. You have options." I braced myself. "What kind of options?" "You can dispute the accounts," she said. "You can place a freeze. You can file a fraud report. You don't have to decide everything today, but you do need to stop the damage." "And if I file a fraud report?" I asked quietly, "Do I have to name her?" The caseworker's eyes met mine. Calm. Direct. If she opened them, yes. My throat tightened. "That's my mother." She didn't flinch. "That's the person who used your identity. Being related doesn't make it less real." I walked out into the sunlight afterward, feeling like my skin didn't fit. My whole life, I'd been trained to protect my mom from consequences. I'd been taught that consequences were cruel, that asking for accountability was betrayal. And here was a stranger saying plainly that accountability was just reality. That week, I took steps I'd been too afraid to take before. Not dramatic steps, practical ones, adult ones. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and moved my direct deposit. I changed all my passwords. I placed a credit freeze and fraud alert. I started disputing accounts with the agencies one by one, documenting every phone call, every reference number, every confirmation email. I didn't do it with rage. I did it like I was cleaning up a spill before it set. Then I made the hardest call. I started removing my name from any service tied to that apartment. When the utility company representative asked, "Are you sure?" I said yes. When she warned me, "If your name is removed, the remaining account holder will be responsible for the balance." If it goes unpaid, service may be disconnected. I said I understand. I didn't sound triumphant. I sounded tired, because I was. But I was also done. For the lease, it took longer. There were forms, signatures, notices. I learned how much paperwork can exist simply to keep someone trapped. I learned how many systems assume families operate in good faith. And I learned how quickly those systems move when you finally stop absorbing someone else's mess. During all of this, I still lived there. I know that sounds strange to people who like clean storylines. Why didn't you just leave? Because leaving isn't always safe. Because leaving isn't always affordable. Because I needed time to build a landing before I stepped off the ledge. Quiet revenge isn't about dramatic exits. It's about choosing survival over performance. I found a small room to rent from a woman who advertised it as peaceful. It was. Cheap, plain, and mine. I moved my essentials first: laptop, documents, clothes, the photo of my dad. I waited until I had the key in my hand before I told myself, you're allowed to have your own space. The day I finally moved the rest, my mom was in the living room watching television like nothing had changed. She barely glanced at the boxes. So you're really doing this? She said with a bored, contemptuous tone, like I was joining a cult. I told you I heard you, I said calmly. She smirked. Don't come crawling back. I nodded once. I won't. I didn't leave in a rush. I didn't slam the door. I didn't give a speech. I carried my last box to my car, set it down, and sat for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel. My chest hurt. Not because I missed the apartment, because I missed the idea that my mother could love me without needing something from me. The first few weeks after moving were weirdly quiet. Too quiet. I kept expecting angry voicemails, guilt texts, family members calling to scold me. They came just not right away. At first, my mom acted like she didn't care. She posted cheerful things online. She told relatives I was busy. She told herself she was fine. Then the system started catching up to her. And that's when the phone rang. It was late afternoon, and I was sitting on my bed folding laundry in my little rented room. The kind of ordinary moment that feels precious when you've lived in chaos for too long. My phone lit up with her name. I stared at it until it almost went to voicemail. I didn't want to answer. Not because I was scared of her yelling. I was past that. I didn't want to answer because some part of me still hoped she'd say something different this time. Something human. I picked up. Her voice hit my ear, already elevated, already accusing, already spinning. What did you do? I didn't match her volume. What are you talking about? They said. She stopped, breathed hard, then barreled on. They said my service got cut off. The apartment's dark. The refrigerator, everything. I can't even charge my phone. I have food going bad. Are you proud of yourself? I closed my eyes. I pictured her pacing, angry at reality, blaming the nearest person. Did you pay the bill? I asked. Don't start, she snapped. You always handled it. I did, I said calmly. And then I stopped. There was a pause, like she couldn't process a world where I was allowed to stop. You can't just stop, she said, voice sharp with panic now. You had your name on it. Not anymore, I said. I removed myself. The account is yours. You did that behind my back. I took a slow breath. You put things in my name behind my back. Her voice dropped, dangerous. So this is payback. It's not payback, I said. It's me not being responsible for things I didn't create. You're trying to ruin me, she hissed. I felt the old guilt try to rise, the old instinct to fix it, to offer money, to make it quiet again. I thought of the credit report, the forged signatures, the late payments, the years of stress. I let the guilt pass through me like weather. I'm not trying to ruin you, I said. I'm refusing to be ruined. She went silent for a heartbeat. Then she changed tactics like she always did when anger didn't work. Her voice turned small. Hurt. After everything I did for you, I didn't take the bait. I'm not arguing about the past, I said. I'm telling you where things stand now. You think you're so mature, she said, bitterness returning. You think you're better than me. No, I said quietly. I think I deserve a future. She inhaled sharply like she wanted to scream. Then she said, "If you tell anyone what you think you know, I will make sure the family understands exactly what kind of daughter you are." That was the moment I realized something important. She didn't fear what she'd done. She feared losing control of the story. "Okay," I said. "What? If you want the family involved," I said, still calm, "then let's involve them. Let's all talk. With paperwork." She didn't respond. I heard only her breathing. For once, she didn't have a line prepared. "I'm hanging up now," I said. "If you want to keep talking, we can do it in a room with witnesses." I ended the call before she could recover. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't the shaking of fear anymore. It was adrenaline. The shock of realizing I could say no and the sky wouldn't fall. The sky had already been falling for years. I'd just been holding it up with my own spine. The next day my aunt called. Her voice was loaded before she even finished saying hello. "Your mother is distraught," she said. "She says you left her without help, that you've been taking advantage." I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself too early. When she finally paused for breath, I said, "Do you want the full story?" "You mean your excuse?" "I mean documents," I said. "If you want to talk about it, I'll come over tonight. Invite whoever you want. I'll bring everything." Silence, then suspiciously fine. That evening, I walked into my aunt's living room with a folder tucked under my arm. My mom was there, sitting very still on the couch, wrapped in a sweater, like she was cold, like she was fragile, like she was the victim. She didn't look at me. She didn't need to. She was waiting for the performance, waiting for me to cry and apologize and beg for forgiveness. My aunt stood by the coffee table like she was hosting an intervention. "This has gone far enough," she said. "Family doesn't do this to family." I placed the folder on the table and opened it like I was laying out a simple truth. "Family also doesn't do this," I said, and slid the first page forward. Utility statements in my name, a store card statement with my information, a loan application, a credit report. Screenshots of messages where my mom demanded money and called me ungrateful when I hesitated. I didn't throw them down dramatically. I didn't narrate each one with a speech. I just arranged them. My aunt picked one up. Her brow furrowed. This is your name." "Yes," I said. She picked up another. "And this too." "Yes." My mom finally spoke, voice sharp. "She's twisting things." She agreed. She knew. I looked at my aunt, not my mom. "Ask her to explain the signatures," I said. My aunt looked at my mom. "Cynthia," she started, then caught herself realizing she'd been using my mom's version of reality for too long. "Donna," she corrected. "Did you open these?" My mom's face tightened. "We were drowning," she said. "I did what I had to do." "You used her identity," my aunt said, voice rising with shock now. "You didn't ask. You didn't tell her." "We're family," my mom snapped, as if that phrase was a magic eraser. "Kids help their parents." "Not like this," my aunt said, and I watched her world tilt. "Not by ruining her credit before she's even started." My mom stood up fast, eyes flashing. "You're all turning on me because she brought papers. Papers don't show what I went through. Papers don't show how alone I was." I kept my voice level. "Being alone isn't permission." She glared at me, voice low. "You think strangers will care about you? Lawyers? Credit people? They'll take your time, and then they'll leave. I'm the only one who's always been here." I felt something ache in my chest, but I didn't let it control my mouth. "You've been here," I said. "And you've been taking." My aunt looked like she might cry. "Donna," she said, "tell me you didn't do this." My mom's mouth opened, then closed. She couldn't deny the documents, so she tried to reframe them. "I kept us afloat," she said. "She's acting like I stole from her. I kept a roof over her head." "With her name," my aunt said, anger sharpening. "With her future." That's when there was a knock at the door. My aunt flinched. "Who is that?" I stood heart-pounding and said, "It's the property manager." My mom's head snapped toward me. "What did you do?" "I told the truth," I said, and walked to the door. The property manager was polite and uncomfortable, like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. He stepped inside, looked at the room, and cleared his throat. "I won't take much time," he said. "I just needed to confirm a few items regarding the lease." My mom's face drained a shade at a time. He looked at me. "You're removed as of next month as requested. The unit will be solely under the remaining tenant." He glanced at my mom. "However, there is a past due balance. Notices have been issued. If the balance isn't resolved by the end of the notice period, we'll have to proceed." My mom's voice came out thin. "Proceed with what?" "Eviction," he said gently. The word sat in the room like a dropped plate. My mom turned to me with horror and fury tangled together. "You did this," she whispered. "You're throwing me out." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I swallowed and said no. "I stopped being the person you could hide behind." She shook her head fast. "I can't believe you do this to your own mother. I can't believe you did it to your own daughter," I said quietly. The property manager, clearly wishing he could vanish, nodded once. "I'll follow up by email," he said, and left. After the door closed, my mom stood there, breathing, hard eyes darting like she was looking for a way to flip the room back into her favor. Then she grabbed her bag. "You'll regret this," she said, voice shaking with rage and fear. "One day you'll need me." I didn't chase her. I didn't beg her to stay. I didn't try to smooth it over for the sake of appearances. I just watched her walk out. The aftermath didn't feel like victory. It felt like grief with paperwork attached. Family members called in the days that followed. Some apologized. Some asked quiet questions. Some still tried to soften what she'd done into mistakes. I didn't fight them. I didn't convince them. I just repeated the same calm line, "I'm protecting myself." And I kept moving forward. I attended meetings with credit agencies. I followed up on disputes. I documented everything. Slowly, the free fall stopped. Not fixed, just stopped. Like a car finally hitting a guardrail before it goes off the cliff. My mom, meanwhile, swung between rage and pity. Messages from unknown numbers. Emails I didn't respond to. A voicemail where she cried and said she missed me, followed by another where she called me cold and heartless. The whiplash used to control me. This time, it just confirmed what I already knew: she wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry it stopped working. Then, about a week before the notice period ended, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and found my mom standing there, smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but emotionally, like the confidence she'd used as armor had finally cracked. Her hair was pulled back messily, dark circles under her eyes, a thin smile that didn't reach anywhere. "You blocked me," she said. "Yes," I replied. "So I'm here," she said, as if showing up was proof of something. "I didn't raise you to treat me like a stranger." I kept my body in the doorway, not inviting her in. "What do you want?" She laughed bitterly. "What do I want? I want my life back. I want my daughter back. I want people to stop looking at me like someone who used her kid's name to avoid consequences," I asked softly. Her face hardened. "I panicked," she said. "I didn't know what else to do after your father left." "I was a kid," I said. "What was I supposed to do? Be your emergency plan forever?" "I did it for us," she insisted, voice rising. "I thought you'd understand when you were older. I thought you'd appreciate what I carried." I felt tears prick, but I didn't let them steer the conversation. "Carrying is one thing," I said. "Using me is another." She stared at me, searching for the crack she used to exploit. "So that's it?" she said. "You're just going to let them put my things on the curb?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth was complicated. Part of me hated the idea of her losing everything. Another part of me knew she'd been willing to make me lose everything for years. I took a breath. "I'm not fixing this," I said. "I'm not paying your debts. I'm not making calls. If you want help, you can get a job. You can talk to a counselor. You can go to the same legal clinic I went to. But I'm not your crutch anymore." Her eyes filled with tears like a weapon. "You're so cold," she whispered. "No," I said quietly. "I'm tired." For a moment, I saw the version of my mom I still wanted to believe, in the one who used to make soup when I was sick, the one who used to braid my hair, the one who used to laugh at silly movies. Then it faded, replaced by bitterness. She turned away. "You'll regret it," she said again and walked down the hall. The day the apartment was actually cleared out, I didn't go. I didn't drive by. I didn't watch from a distance like some kind of moral spectator. I stayed in my small room and tried to keep my hands busy. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it. My stomach tightened. I answered. Her voice came through thin and cracked. "It's me," she said. "I'm using someone else's phone." I didn't say her name. I just listened. "They're here," she continued, voice trembling. "They're moving things out. The couch, the table, everything." She laughed bitterly, the sound of someone trying to make a joke out of collapse. "You should come see the results of your responsible choices." I closed my eyes. "You mean the results of yours?" Silence stretched heavy and stubborn. "Are you happy?" she asked finally, and the question landed like an accusation and a plea at the same time. "You got what you wanted." I thought about what I wanted. I wanted a mother who loved me without a bill attached. I wanted a life where my name belonged to me. I wanted peace. None of those things were revenge. They were basic. "This was never about being happy," I said. "It was about surviving." "You could have helped," she whispered. "I did," I replied, and my voice didn't shake the way it used to. "For years. With my money. With my time. With my health." "You didn't call it help, you called it obligation." She breathed in hard. In the background, I heard muffled voices, someone saying, "Ma'am, we need you to sign," and the low hum of a situation moving forward without her permission. That's what consequences are. The world continuing. "Where will you go?" I asked, surprising myself with the softness of the question. "I don't know," she admitted, and for a second she sounded like someone who had finally run out of excuses. "Your aunt said I can stay for a bit, but she said she's not paying anything." Everybody suddenly grew a backbone. I didn't respond with satisfaction. I just said, "That's what happens when people see the truth." Her voice broke. "Is there any part of you that still loves me?" That was the moment that hurt the most because it was the closest she'd come to sounding like a mother in a long time. I leaned my forehead against the wall and let my eyes close. I thought about the good memories that still existed stubbornly despite everything. I thought about the bad ones that had crowded them out. I felt grief and relief tangled together like a knot. "I do love you," I said quietly. "That's why this hurts." "Then why," she sobbed, "would you let it go this far?" "Because loving you doesn't mean letting you destroy me," I replied. "And it doesn't mean pretending what happened didn't happen." She sniffled, pulling herself back into anger the way she always did when vulnerability got too close. "So that's it," she said. "You're done with me." "I'm done being your shield," I said. "Your wallet. Your scapegoat." I swallowed. "If you ever decide to get real help, therapy work, taking responsibility, then I'll talk. I'll listen. But I'm not financing your denial." There was silence again, and it wasn't empty. It was full of everything we'd never said properly. In the background, someone spoke louder. "Ma'am, we need to finish up." "I have to go," she whispered. "Okay," I said. She hesitated. "Goodbye," she said like it cost her something. "Goodbye," I answered. And I meant it in the way adults mean it when they're finally choosing reality over fantasy. "I hope you learn how to pay your bills," I added softly, "and I hope you learn how to pay your debts to the people who loved you." She didn't respond. I heard her breathing hitch. Then the line went dead. I stood there in my small room, phone in my hand, feeling hollow and lighter at the same time. Somewhere across town, the apartment that had held so many arguments was being emptied. Not by me, by the world, by policies and notices and deadlines and consequences that didn't care about family stories. For years, my mom had acted like love meant immunity, like the word mother erased numbers and signatures and harm. But that day, reality didn't ask her how she felt about it. Reality just arrived quietly and did what it always does when the bills finally come due. And for the first time in my life, I didn't rush in to cover the cost.